Rome is one of the most amazing cities on earth. Layers upon layers of history, ancient ruins, and mind-blowing palaces. As one writer once wrote, Rome was a poem pressed into service as a city. And you can explore Rome this October, 2024, from October 6th to the 12th. And let me assure you, if you come with us to Rome, we'll be letting you in on dozens of Rome's most hidden secrets. The stuff tourists never get to see. The stuff that even the locals don't know about. But you don't have to take my word for it. Here are some of the people who went on last year's trip.
The entire trip was memorable. By the end of the trip, everybody loved everybody. Everybody learned so much. And more importantly, everybody learned what they wanted to learn more about.
We got to see so many things that most tourists probably don't see in Rome. Our hosts, Tiffany and Katie, are really amazing, and their knowledge of Rome is amazing.
I would absolutely recommend it. It was just one of the best weeks I can recall. It was a week of education and pleasure.
It just exceeded all my expectations by far.
If you have an opportunity to come on this trip in the future, do it.
It was such a fantastic trip, and I'm just so glad I came.
So what do you say? Do you think you might want to come to Rome? Send us an email and we'll send you more information. Email bittersweetlifepodcast@gmail.com. That's bittersweetlifepodcast@gmail.com, and we'll send you all the details. And don't delay, you need to register by August 1st. Welcome to Rome. This is The Bittersweet Life with Katie Sewell and Tiffany Parks. Hello, this is The Bittersweet Life. I'm Katie Sewell.
I'm Tiffany Parks.
Tiffany in Rome, Katie in Seattle. Tiffany, an expat/immigrant. What are you now? Expat, immigrant?
I don't know.
Resident, longtime resident of Rome.
Citizen. Confused. I don't know. Let's just call me an expat for now, just as for sake of brevity. But clearly, it's more than that by this point.
It's all the things. Katie living in Seattle, having once lived abroad as an expat, now a repat, I suppose, now and for life. Today, we are picking up on last week's topic, where we discussed Roman leisure in basically historic old Rome. Today, we're going to be talking about modern day leisure from the point of view of Italy versus the United States. How do the Italians do leisure versus how do the people in the United States do leisure? And seems a fitting topic for kind of midsummer, where we're all supposed to be relaxing ever so slightly at least. Tiffany, why don't you kick us off with a way that people tend to relax when it comes to Italy?
At the end of the day.
Well, I mean, you introduced this topic last week, so you tell me.
Right.
What were you thinking of?
The first thing that came to mind was just the summer vacation tradition in Italy, which is not across the board, but it's a pretty good rule of thumb that 9 out of 10 Italians are going to take a significant amount of the month of August off.
Mm-hmm.
I think that number would have been higher 10, 20, 30 years ago. It would have been almost 100%. Maybe all the Italians who didn't work in the tourism industry, they were all taking the entire month of August off.
Mm-hmm.
And, this has become a kind of a funny tweet. I think it's a tweet that has been passed around and many people have posted some version of this. But I know I saw it a couple years ago and it was like, this is like the American, you'd put your auto reply on when you're on vacation, and it's like, I will be out of the office for the next day and a half. But if you need, having kidney surgery, but if you need me, you can text me and I will get back to you if it's an emergency.
Yeah.
And versus the Italian auto reply, which is, I'll be gone for the next 2 months. I won't be checking email. Bye.
Yeah.
They're both an exaggeration, I hope. But the idea is there. And I think it's a cliche. People have, been talking about this for a long time, but it's also pretty true that Italians are way better at closing down shop and just being like, okay, nothing is happening. Not like, okay, I'll check my emails like sporadically and maybe I'll take a few calls if I really need to. And I mean, I'm sure there are people who have certain professions that require that. So I'm not saying there are no Italians who are doing that, but it's not the norm.
Yeah. Now that we've been doing this show for 10 years, and a lot of people consider me an expert in Italy and especially Rome, I get this question a lot. I was just thinking this 2 days ago when somebody asked me the question again. I am often asked about traveling to Italy in August, and I don't know why. I guess it's because that's when Americans have time off and they're thinking about what to do on their family vacation. And so I get this question, should I go to Italy in August? Multiple times every single year. And my advice has always been kind of based on this stereotype that much of Italy is shut down during the month of August because people are on vacation. I always tell them, one, it's too hot. Don't go to Italy in August. And number two, things might not be open. And so maybe go somewhere else. Go anywhere else. Aim for Italy come September or July, if you don't mind the heat.
Or October.
Or October when we're going to Italy, which you should come. Why not? The cutoff is August 1st, so get your registration in. bittersweetlifepodcast@gmail.com. But that said, I mean, it is a stereotype, but it's a stereotype for a reason because stuff like restaurants aren't open, shops aren't open, people are gone. It's a different kind of month.
It is. I have seen a huge shift since I moved here in 2004. So that's 20 years ago. So clearly big shifts do happen over 20 years.
Right.
But to be honest, the very first year I lived in Rome, I was gone for all of August too. I went to my mom's. My sister was getting married and I spent the whole month of August in the States. But the year after that, if I'm not mistaken, I spent at least a couple of weeks of August in Rome. And it was like ghost town, like tumbleweed. Like walking through Trastevere was, not everything is closed. There's going to be like little corner pizzerias that are open. There's going to be coffee bars that are open, but maybe a third or less than what would ordinarily be open. The kind of local restaurants that all the local people go to, meaning all the good restaurants, they're closed. Most of the shops are closed. Supermarkets are not closed, but the cute little guy who makes purses or whatever, that's all going to be closed. So I mean, it was much more dramatic, like I said, 20 years ago. Now, in outskirts, you'll see more of that. But if you're in the center of Rome, more things are likely to be open. Again, not everything is going to be open, and you'll see a lot of restaurants now do like 2 weeks, maybe 3, but it's not as common to see like, okay, we're closed from the 1st to the 31st of August. Like that is, I will be honest, that's not as common. Some restaurants do stay open now because they feel like if I'm open for, at least 1 week in August, I'm going to get a lot of business because there's so many other restaurants are closed. So things shift. It's not like it was in the 50s or even the first decade of the 2000s. It feels different. The big cities feel different. And I'm sure that this is triply, quadruply, quintuply true for smaller towns. Villages are probably ghost towns. Small touristy cities are going to have a little bit more. But what you have in Italy is like you have all of the quote unquote like summer vacation places, like the city of Rimini or Viareggio or any city on the Amalfi Coast or in the Italian Riviera. Like they're just like triply busy, so all of the business goes there. If you're in Sicily, if you're in Sardinia. So it's kind of like you lose either way you go. If you come to Italy and you go to the summer vacation hotspots, it's going to be overcrowded, right? Everything's going to be literally twice as expensive as it would have been in the first half of July or June. And if you go to the big cities, Rome, Florence, Venice, there's not going to be many locals there. There'll be tourists there, some, but you're not going to see a lot of real life, which, I think is a big shame if you're, missing out on the real cultural interactions and stuff.
What do you attribute that shift to? Because it can't just be because there's more tourists now, because there have been tourists over that entire 20 years that wanted to go to Rome and Italy in August. So what is happening culturally where people aren't taking as much time off anymore? Do you have any idea?
I think it's a mental shift of like Italy catching up in quotation marks because it's not necessarily a positive change, for them. But I think a lot of it is just Italians being sort of like waking up and being like, hey, I'm losing out on a lot of money. If we stay open in August, we're going to get all that tourist cash of all because all the other restaurants on this street are closed. I see in Italians in general, this is really speaking generally, but over that course of 20 years, I do see more of a sense of hustling. You're never going to get the amount of hustling over here that you've got in the States. It's not a hustle culture, but it's a little bit more than it used to be. It can be frustrating if you're coming from the States because you're like, I don't understand. I'm trying to give you money. Why don't you want to take it? And it's kind of wonderful that there are cultures in the world who are like, you know what? Like, I'd rather have my peace and quiet or whatever it is that they want, my extra long vacation. I'd rather have that than have your money. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Like, for example, like I like to collect little espresso cups from the different cafes in Rome. And there's this one that I really liked and I really wanted it. And I was just trying to convince the bar owner to sell me one. And I'm like, I'm not asking you to give this to me free. Like, can you just sell it to me? Like, how much would you? And he wouldn't sell it to me because he had like a limited number of them and he knew what a pain in the butt it was to order more. And so he's like, no, I'm sorry, I can't sell you. And I'm like, I'm gonna pay you. Like for a moment there was this like struggle of like we couldn't understand each other. Like I couldn't understand as an American why he wouldn't sell me something. You can sell it to me for twice what you paid for it, but it was like not worth it to him.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, an Italian thing that is probably slowly shifting, but it's definitely more of an Italian thing than an American thing, which is like the effort that it's going to cost me to do this is not worth the money you're going to give me.
But it's interesting though, because when everybody was shutting down and taking the month of August off and going to the coasts, going to the beaches, I remember seeing pictures from when I was living over there about 10 something years ago now. And the beach towns, which I had visited during the off season, looked miserable. People like packed in on these chairs all along the beach, hundreds and hundreds of people all taking their vacation at once. And it is sort of like this weird thing where, yeah, respect my leisure time, but why are we all doing it at exactly the same time? Because then it just completely overruns these little towns, drives all the prices
I know.
up. So in a way, if they were staggering it like say Americans do from June to August, then it would be a more pleasant experience.
There is way more staggering going on now than there used to be. But here's the problem. A lot of businesses, a lot of like, for example, one of my colleagues, she's a lawyer, okay? And they're not like, okay, Jane, you can have your vacation the first 2 weeks of June, and John, you can have yours the second 2 weeks of June, and Judy, the first 2 weeks of July. It's not like that. The law company closes for the entire month of August. So you don't have a choice of when you're going to take your vacation. Or maybe they close the middle 2 weeks of August. They're going to close in August. They're not going to close in July. When the magazine that I have worked for years, they close for 2 or 3 weeks in August. So it's not just like, okay, this one person is on vacation right now and we're going to all sort of cover them until they get back and then they'll cover for us. No, they just close. Restaurants just close. And that's usually because many restaurants are run by the owners. And so the owners are kind of, well, if I'm not here to take care of the restaurant, I can't trust it to my employees. They're not going to be able to handle it. Yeah. So I've got to be here.
It is interesting because if the entire law firm is closed for the month of August, who cares what your out of office reply is? I mean, nobody's there.
Yeah.
So
nobody's there.
It's like, just hold your horses. You got to get a divorce. You're waiting until September. Sorry.
Well, that's the thing about life in Italy in August, which is so frustrating when you don't take your holidays in August, because my husband happens to have a job in which he sometimes gets August, but only about maybe half the time. And I say gets August, it's not necessarily a good thing. Like it's good in the sense that it lines up with my holidays, but it's bad in the sense that, then we're stuck taking holidays the same time everyone else is.
Right.
So it's kind of like a double-edged sword. But often we're not taking holidays in August, and I'm trying to get stuff done, and it's like you just can't. It's
Yeah,
like
you're trying
it's
to.
so frustrating to get to be in the city, and there are some wonderful things about being in the city in August. And before we had Aurelio, when we were living in the center, and he still had his scooter, we used to really love August in Rome, and we'd take the scooter all over town, and the streets would be empty. And we weren't in areas maybe that tourists would generally go. We'd go up to the Gianicolo Hill, or we'd, go down little alleyways and find, the random restaurant that's open. And we loved it. But now that I'm like, okay, I actually have to work. I'm trying to get in touch with such and such a person, but their whole office is closed for the whole month. It's maddening.
Yeah, although in a way it kind of almost forces you to slow down. It's sort of but I know that maddeningness because as a person from the radio where you have to be doing stuff every single day, and like once I've told you before that when I used to do live radio, that week between Christmas and New Year's over here in the US where nobody was in the office, everybody was taking the whole time off, and yet I still had to do 2 hours of a live program every single day.
Oh my God.
We were just grasping at straws trying to find people who could be on the show. It was just calling and calling and calling and being like, what about this idea? And then finding like, oh, we can't do that idea. I can't find any person who can talk about that idea. So what else? What else we got?
Note to self, if you want, this is a brilliant tip for anyone trying to get more coverage of whatever the project they're working on. Like, get in touch with your local radio station the week between Christmas and New Year's if you want to be on and
it's not
promote your stuff.
Yeah, be like, I am here and ready to go. Yeah, that's not a bad tip. Maybe we should follow that tip.
Yeah.
Tiffany dropping in just to remind you that it is your last chance to join our amazing Rome trip that is coming up in October. If you have been dreaming of going to Rome, if it's been on your bucket list forever, or you just can't wait to go back, but you have procrastinated on planning your travels, well, you have one last chance to come with us. We will take care of everything for you. All you have to do is book your flight from the 6th to the 12th of October, and we will take care of the rest, from a beautiful hotel to all of the tickets to all of the sites, tours with us, personalized, intimate, fascinating tours with us every single morning of your stay, suggestions for restaurants, insider tips, everything you could hope for a truly special and unforgettable time in Rome. All you have to do is get in touch with us and let us know that you're interested. We'll give you all of the details. You can email us at bittersweetlifepodcast@gmail.com, and we will take care of everything. Most people have a little bit of anxiety, especially when it comes to hours and hours worth of research, trying to find the best restaurants, book your hotel, make sure it's in a good neighborhood, find a tour guide, decide which sites you want to see, organize your time, buy tickets, make sure that the place you want to go doesn't sell out. There is so much to plan beyond just booking your flight. And that's where we come in. We are offering a trip to Rome this October. What's special about it is we will take care of everything for you. With the exception of your flight, we will be there to make sure that you have an amazing time. Fascinating, historic, and artistic walking tours. We'll be seeing little-known sites. We'll be offering you the chance to go to the big sites if you want to, booking your tickets, which can be very complicated and hard to get, setting you up with other tour guides if you are so inclined to take even more tours. But more even than that, giving you the insider tips on Rome. I've lived in Rome for 20 years now, working in the tourism industry. We will help you see Rome as it is meant to be seen. Get in touch with us as soon as you can, because we just have a few rooms left and we are closing registration on August 1st. So email us at bittersweetlifepodcast@gmail.com and we'll give you all of the details. Hope to see you in Rome.
Well, before we run out of time, though, I mean, now that you've been over there for 20 years, I'm trying to think, like, how different is the approach to leisure in the United States to Italy? I mean, yeah, we kind of are a little bit always on, and we also tend to not have like massive, generally speaking anyway, massive time off, unless have been in a company for a long time, you accrue vacation. So over the years, you get longer and longer time off. But, you start with the 2 weeks that is so well known here in the United
And
States.
don't you have to work for a whole year just to get that 2 weeks? Is that
I think it depends on who you work for. Yeah, I think that varies. People get signing bonuses, at certain companies, or certain companies are government agencies and they have certain rules about how much time people get off, and, things like that. So,
Yeah, here we get, I think if you were to add up all the vacation time, it's closer to, I want to say it's closer to 6 weeks than 4. It's a lot here. It's a lot. If you take, a lot of people don't take it all at the same time. They might take 2.5, 3 weeks in the summer, and they might take a week around Christmas time and then a weekend here and there, but it's very generous. I'm wondering, because, I haven't lived in the United States for so long and I haven't worked in the United States for so long. What is it like after work? At home, like, I mean, and I don't really mean necessarily someone like yourself who is self-employed, who works from home, who's kind of always on, but like the typical person who has a 9 to 5 job, like your husband, for example. Is he checking his work emails in the afternoon? Like you get the stereotype is that Americans are always checking their work emails and they're always available.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, maybe that's not true.
I can't compare it to him because he just took over a new position. And so, yeah, he's pretty much working all the time right now. But I don't know. I think that that's a gray area. I think it does leach in to a lot of people's lives later on. But I'm sure it also has to do with your feeling of the level of responsibility and how much you actually care about your job. I would imagine that if you're in a job, back when I was a temp, for instance, and I was working day in, day out, it wasn't like I ever cared to look once I was off. They could have been trying to reach me and I'd be like, I don't know, until I'm there the next morning, forget it. But I didn't care about that job. So I think it has somewhat to do with your investment in what it is that you're doing.
Yeah.
I mean,
And it definitely matters the type of job you have for sure.
yeah, and I mean, so much of American identity is wrapped up in what you do for a living. Who you are and what you do for a living is a part of your character. It's a part of who you are in most places in the United States. I think in New Orleans, maybe not. Everywhere else, that's going to be an ice-breaking question. What do you do for a living? And if I say, I work for a radio station, we could be on that at an afternoon barbecue for the next 45 minutes, and then I'd be like, well, what do you do? And then, I work as a CPA. I don't know. And then you'd be like, oh, we judge each other based on what it is that we do. And it's very much a part of our character. And so I think it's just so much more wrapped up in our identity than
I think so, yeah.
it is for you. And maybe that means that we work more. It makes us feel relevant and like vital in the world in some ways. I think that maybe Italians don't feel. One thing you hear a lot from people who have 9 to 5 jobs or kind of freelancy creative jobs like mine is you'll often hear people say, oh man, I wish I had a job as a barista. I wish I had a job working in a bar. I miss those days. You always hear that because what did it mean? One, it was a very active job and so many of us are kind of stuck at a computer all the time. But I mean, secondly, it was like, what was its main defining characteristic? When it was over, it was over. You finish your shift working at the coffee shop. What is there to carry on? Nothing. You just walk out and go do stuff. And you don't carry around the coffee shop with you in your head. You deal with it the next morning, So I think there is a lot of lament about, oh, those were the days when I had that job that didn't follow me around for the rest of time. And I think there's also that, because it's so much of our identity, if you're a 20-something and you're like, what do you do? I work in a bar. Everyone's like, oh, cool. I mean, they're not expecting you to do much yet. So you're like, oh yeah, which bar? I'll come visit you. So, and then, at some point you wake up around like late 20s, early 30s, and you're like, oh man, I got to do something with my life. I can't just like work at this dumb tavern forever. I think a lot of people like go out to restaurants and bars and places like that, parks after work, to try to let it loose. And I live in the Pacific Northwest, so outdoor activities are very much something people try to wrap into their day-to-day lives. So you'll find a lot of people who before they go to work or after they go to work, they might go paddleboarding or kayaking or biking or running, or, they're going
Sounds
to
amazing.
Yeah, do these things that on the water, or, paddleboard to where they can get a margarita after work with some of their friends, So I do think that people are able to shut it off, but it is more wrapped up in who we are. I think we judge each other based on what we do more.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because remember when I was having that end of year dinner that we talked about on a bonus episode?
Yes, if you missed that, find us at patreon.com/the Bittersweet Life podcast.
But what came into my head that night, besides all of the chaos that was going around, I was sitting next to a couple of moms that I don't talk to that much. And I kept having the urge, even though I haven't lived in the States for 20 years, but I am American. I kept having the urge, and part of it was just like, I need to make conversation with these women, and I have no idea what to say.
Right.
And I'm the type of person who, like, I feel awkward if I'm sitting next to somebody and we're not talking. And I kept being like, let me ask you what you do, but that's rude. I can't do that.
And
like,
it's rude.
It's
rude to ask.
It's kind of rude. Yeah. I think it's a kind of, and I mean, the funny thing is, when I was in high school, I think it was during my French class, we were talking, how when you're in a language class, you talk also about like cultural norms. And I remember the French teacher saying, it is rude in France to ask people what they do. And I was like, come on, that can't be right. That's just ridiculous. Maybe that was true like in the 50s. But here I am in 2024 in Italy, and I'm like, I think it's rude. Something is stopping me from doing it. It could come up in conversation, and then we could talk about it. But like, to just be like, so what do you do? Even the words, like, che cosa fai? Like, that means, what are you doing? Like, if I said to you, che cosa fai? You'd think, oh, I'm
be like, I'm at a dinner party. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm eating my, like, whoa, what? Do I have something on my face? What do you mean, what am I doing? So you could say, che cosa fai nella vita? What do you do in life? Even that, though, it's like, it's kind of off-putting.
But there aren't people who are proud of what they do in life.
Of course, there are people that are proud of what they do, but I feel, and I mean, maybe this is just me. I don't know. I don't know if this is true, but I feel like a lot of people in Italy. I mean, this has got to be true everywhere in the world. It's not just Italy. I don't know. I feel stupid saying this, but I feel like a lot of people, at least that I come into contact with, have very humble jobs, because in Italy, different from in America, like you said, in America, it's like by the time you're in your late 20s or early 30s, you're like, whoa, I got to get a better job. In Italy, there really isn't that expectation. The expectation in Italy is more like, you have a job. Oh my God, good for you. It's like, just having a job is an accomplishment.
Yeah. You know what else is interesting? When you're someone like where you have multiple jobs, which of course I think about a lot, and I have several friends that have wear multiple hats over the course of the day. I certainly do. You certainly do. It's interesting when you are at a party, like I've been at several hobnobbing type of parties lately. It is interesting to see which things people latch on to. If they say, well, what do you do? And you go, oh, well, I do several things. I'm a writer, and I'm a podcast consultant, and I'm a fill-in host for NPR. And they'll be like, which station? Nothing has piqued their interest up to this point. Oh, which station? Then you say, oh, well, it's this very famous station in Seattle. And then people will go, oh, well, I do listen to that all the time. Like, can I ask you, do you mind if I ask you what your last name is? And of course, at one point in my life, this was my identity. Like, before I moved to Rome, this was like central to who I was. That my name, me being on the radio, it was so well known to almost everybody I encountered. Now it's less well known because I'm just a fill-in host. But now I'm just a fill-in host. So it's no longer totally central to my identity. So then I'm like, oh yeah, what's your last name? Katie Sewell. Katie Sewell's my name. Oh yeah, I totally have heard you, and it's not like it's not a compliment, but you're also just like, yeah, but I'm so much more than that.
Yeah.
I'm doing so many other things, So it is kind of funny too how asking somebody about their job can either be expansive or kind of pigeonholing depending on how they feel about it at any given time. So, I mean, I think in a way, Italians are wise to search for bigger topics of conversation, and we would probably be wise to do that as well. But I don't know if that's going to actually change here in the United States. I don't know if we'll ever lead with, so which trails have you been hiking lately? Or, I don't know. I don't know what you lead with when you don't lead with a job. But
yeah, I think that is what I turned to, actually. Now that I'm thinking back to that dinner, it was, where are you going on vacation?
Leisure. So we lead with work to bring it full circle here at the end.
Circle, yes.
You lead with leisure. We lead with work. And boy, is that something telling right there. Interesting. All right. Well, wow. With that great conclusion, we should just leave it there. Let's go take some time off. But we will leave it there. And until next time, this is The Bittersweet Life. I'm Katie Sewell.
I'm Tiffany Parks.
Join us again. Bye. Support for The Bittersweet Life comes from our listeners. We do not appreciate podcasts that are littered with ads, sometimes interrupting the host's mid-sentence. We are committed to not doing that on this show, but we do that with listener support. If you love this show, if you like that it's kind of tranquil compared to a lot of other things you encounter in your life, support us at patreon.com/thebittersweetlifepodcast. There is a link in the show notes. And we are trying to reach a goal of $1,000 in income every month. And we get there one person at a time, donating $5, $10, $20 a month, whatever you can afford. And with that, of course, comes perks. 2 bonus episodes every month. Soon we'll be starting regular online meetups, handwritten thank you notes in the mail, and more. You can read all about the special benefits at patreon.com/thebittersweetlifepodcast. Help us reach our goal. Help keep this a place that is not littered with advertising. And please know that your donation really buoys us. You're not just another number. You're a person. And you're a person who's keeping this show going. We really couldn't be more grateful. Find a link in the show notes. And thanks.